The Gulf Coast Growth Show is sponsored by Chevron Pasadena Refinery and is an extension of the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region, where our mission is to market and grow a vibrant regional economy. All right, hey guys, and welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. I am here solo today. My co-host Zeke Smith couldn't make it today, but we are out at Nape, the wonderful conference. It's huge. I love every time I get to come out to a conference. It's just the energy in these places is so exciting. And we are joined, we actually got the opportunity to come out on behalf of our friends at OGGN. They're fantastic, Mark LaCour and his team, and really the energy atmosphere of ensuring that, you know, we're not part of their organization, but they understand we have a footprint in oil and gas and energy, and they know that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, right? We have to tell the story that energy is here to stay.
Right.
We need it.
Yes.
And we got to continue to do what we can, especially here in the great state of Texas. So glad to have you joining us today. And I am joined by Bill Shanahan and Brian Pieri.
Yep, that's right.
That?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Well,
That's
it's not my
awesome.
first rodeo with unique names with guests, but and they're with Energy Rogue LLC. And I was talking to Mark. I said, man, I need the right guys for my audience. And he said, I these are the best guys for your audience right now because they are so in tune with LNG, what's happening, really every cycle, right, from bottom to top, because you guys are data guys, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're data guys, but I actually spent a stint with Sumitomo, and we actually went through a process of exporting from Dominion Cove Point on the East Coast and took it all the way to Tokyo for Tokyo Gas. So the thing is that I actually had a stint at Chevron where we handled LNG cargoes, both import and export.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. So yeah, well, let's do that. Let's before we dive into the show and what we're going to tackle today, guys. They're going to share a little bit of data and really that supports what's taking place and kind of a forecast of what we can expect in this upcoming year. That being said, I want to give these guys a chance to tell their story because their background really parlays into why they know so much and why they're really perfectly poised with their platform to be great value contributors in the marketplace. So Brian, give us a little bit background on what you've done in the past.
wow, that sounded awesome. Can you do all our pitches? That was great. That was awesome. So listen, my name is Brian, and my partner Bill. We have known each other since the mid-1990s, and Bill did an amazing thing for me because he educated me about the business. I joined the business. I didn't know anything about it. And one of the interesting aspects is throughout the time in the career, I've done anything from trade natural gas to trading crude oil to trading NGLs to handling midstream assets, both gathering, processing, transportation, to take any type of commodity through a pipeline, through a truck, through a ship. So the thing is that the logistics that move the commodity through the infrastructure that is built is so intricate and interconnected. For example, and one of the we were just talking with Warren this morning, and one of the things that I brought up was Hurricane Rita back in what was that, 2006, 2005, 6. Hurricane Rita came through the east side of Houston and went over to Port Arthur. Well, what that did is that actually knocked off production in Wyoming. So a hurricane in the Gulf Coast knocked off production in Wyoming, and a lot of people are like, why? And I said, it's because of the interconnectedness.
Right.
And the bottleneck was actually in Mont Belvieu, where most of our natural gas liquids are separated from from the natural gas
grade,
and from the Y grade. And because they didn't have enough storage on the liquid side, production had to go offline. It impacted Permian, it impacted Wyoming, all the way up. And so when you're talking about LNG, one of the interesting things is I actually spent my stint. I joined Chevron in 2004.
Oh, wow.
Now, 2004, I think it was 2004. It might have been 2003. But 2004 was an interesting time. At the time in the natural gas space in the United States, we were running out of supply. We had not figured out shale. We've since figured out shale, but in 2004, we started building as a nation, as an investment community, spent hundreds of billions of dollars building import terminals for LNG because we were going to need LNG imported into the country. And then within 3 years, oops, we need to send it the other way. So we started spending hundreds of billions of dollars turning them around, and that's where Cheniere was born, because it started with an import facility that was turned around to go backwards.
Wow.
So it was actually designed to import natural gas, and that's where you realize the intricacies. So Bill and I have been through the industry in a lot of different segments, and later on in my career handled LNG exports for Dominion, out of Dominion Cove Point for Pacific Summit, which was a subsidiary of Sumitomo. And there's a lot of interconnectedness. And what we did, I'm going to say this, and then I'll leave it to my partner to tell me where I'm wrong. What we did is we realized when we went from the trading side of the business into the producer side, into the midstream side, into the consumption side, that there was a huge information gap. I had access to so much information when I was on the trading shop that when I went to the production side or the consumption side, there was nothing. And so what that meant is I had to spend 20 hours if I wanted to understand, a week, if I wanted to understand what was, are we oversupplied? Are we undersupplied? What are the balances? As I just said, one little, not little, a hurricane's not little, but Rita knocked off production in Wyoming. So Bill and I have spent our careers trying to figure out after the fact, why did that happen?
Right.
And so you have to understand all the correlations and the understanding. And what we did is we put this into a subscription service that's $89 a month. And if you want to actively talk about your business and join our community, which is phenomenally growing, that's $179 a month. That means we can book meetings and talk about your particular business and what's important to you.
Understood.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you want to tell me?
I'm
where I'm
still
wrong?
trying to process the guys who what that conversation had to sound like when you invest billions of dollars and then a couple of years later you're like, hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
our bad.
Yeah.
We need to import, we need to export, not import.
We have been in and around this business with multiple startups, and there's a lot of phenomenal startups with great ideas, and they make a name for themselves. As a matter of fact, we're staring at one that is now a subsidiary of ExxonMobil. XTO was one of the first people to discover shale, and I actually bought gas, and one of our customers is a legacy that used to be called Cross Timbers.
Wow.
And they developed a way to extract natural gas out of the Barnett Shale.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was kind of the birth of shale. Was Cross Timbers was at the forefront, and they were one of the leaders. And we got to see all these amazing transitions to where it's, I think we can do something.
Right.
But there's also for every XTO that is now a subsidiary of Exxon, there are hundreds of companies that try something, spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and oops.
Yeah.
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 Oops is never good.
$1 billion oops.
Yeah.
Oops is never good.
Yeah. So, Bill, thanks for joining us today. And I know you were going to share a little bit about your background. And obviously, you guys have worked in concert with each other for a while.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about what you've done.
Well, I started in this business climbing derricks offshore.
Okay.
And so, in fact, on my hard hat, it said, please do not use this worm for bait. and so from there, I've had the opportunity to actually be anywhere from the rig floor to the boardroom. And it's been really good. I've been in marketing, spent 8 years as a credit manager.
Okay.
You know, and all this with a religion degree.
Pretty amazing.
So
well, I'm thinking, I think that sounds like the name of your next book.
Exactly. Well, no, I'm still working on my Bill Shanahan book of science.
Rig floor to the boardroom.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm still working on my Bill Shanahan book of science.
There you go.
I'll call it the BS of BS.
The BS of BS. So, well, the one thing that I love, and I think you just touched up on it, is there's so much evolution in what we
Right.
do. and you guys are really a part of that. But you've gotten to witness so much, and really, when you think about it, you say we say billions of dollars of oops, but with every dollar that's spent, there's jobs that are created. There's opportunity that's created.
Absolutely.
And it's just fueled our economy for such a long period of time.
Well,
And
a lot of
I think
people.
it's going to continue to do that, right? As we continue to look at that. So talk to us a little bit about. I mean, obviously you can have this historical perspective because you guys have been a part of it. But now that we have data and we're using this data, what do you see the forecast for this upcoming year? And really, like, if you guys had to say, we've been at this, for so many years. If we were to cast out in the future, what are your thoughts on that?
So there are multiple opinions when you come into price and projections of supply and demand.
Okay.
That is kind of the crux of everything. We base a lot of our long-term thoughts based upon fundamental supply and demand because that's a slower moving, bigger variable. Because ultimately, there are times where price gets dislocated from equilibrium on supply and demand. For example, our customers during 2022, we had amazingly high prices on crude oil and natural gas in the United States. And as a matter of fact, natural gas was around $10. And in our community, we're very fortunate enough that we have an extensive community. In our community was one of the largest petrochemical complexes along the Gulf Coast. And I had a call with him, and I said, they are on the consumption side since they're in petrochemical, so they're having to pay $9, $10 Henry Hub pricing.
Right.
Whereas today it's $2. So I talked to him and I said, how are you managing this? And he goes, you know what? The entire petrochemical complex is out of the money right now. This won't last. And so we as a community started informing our community these high prices are not going to last, and they went from $10 all the way down to $2.
Okay.
Now, I think we've overcorrected. I think equilibrium is somewhere between $3 to $5 for natural gas. But now when you open up projections into the future on LNG went from 0 BCF a day of exports to now we export over 14 BCF a day. Okay. So there are independent terminals. There are some being built down in Brownsville with Rio Grande. There are multiple terminals that are being built in Mexico, in Canada, in Australia, Qatar. Like, it is an internationally connected. The United States went from exporting 0 to wanting to import to currently we export 20% of the supply of the United States. So we exported to
of the U.S. Or?
Yeah.
Of the U.S. Yes.
Okay.
So basically, what that means is every 5th day of production goes out of the country.
Okay, there you
So
go.
we export to Mexico, and we via pipeline.
Okay.
And then we export LNG 14 BCF a day, and we roughly produce a little over 100 BCF a day. So simple math is 14 BCF a day plus we export 6 to 7 BCF a day to Mexico. It's roughly 20%. And now if you forecast forward on LNG specifically, you have to look at what is happening. Well, the 14 BCF a day on capacity is about to expand to over 20. So that will be completed within the next 14 months.
Wow.
And so we're about to export and have a step change on our exports. But in addition to that, Mexico has 2 BCF a day on export terminal that's going to be coming within that same time frame, and Canada has 2 BCF a day. So what that means is we're going to export more into Mexico. We're going to import less natural gas because we import natural gas from Canada. We're going to be importing less. So the supply-demand balance is about to be changing. So currently, Henry Hub is $2. If you look at the Netherlands and Japan, Korea, those prices are anywhere from $9 to $10 right now.
Wow.
So that's what is important is we actually track on our platform the JKM marker, the Japan Korea marker, and the TTF, which is the Netherlands. TTF is the tidal transfer facility for LNG.
Yes.
Those are the prices for LNG in Europe and in Asia.
Okay.
That gets delivered to our community by email every day.
Okay, fantastic.
And so you're able to correlate that between Henry Hub and begin to build correlations and saying, I mean, that price, while today it was 9, a year and a half ago, it was 80.
Right.
And so with that, we always have to understand, okay, so what's going on in Europe, right? We actually try to figure out the weather in Europe. I never thought I'd be doing that.
Huh.
And so because based on other demand, especially with now the Russian pipeline closed,
Right.
they're more reliant on LNG, and so they have to have the ability to offload the ships. And on top of that, when the European storage is full, that's only 25% of their needs for the winter.
Wow.
And so they have to continue to bring
They
in.
got to keep bringing it in.
Right.
Right.
Conversely, one of the things that we actually talked about within our community was before Freeport had their hiccup, they had a fire that impacted their export facility that actually shut Freeport LNG down for several months. Is when natural gas was $10, one of the contemplations that we have with our community, we asked questions. We said, well, wait a second, we export 14 BCF a day. What if one of these are mechanical facilities? They will have downtime. We haven't experienced it yet. It will happen, and someday it will be unexpectedly. Unfortunately, 4 months later, Freeport happened, and I was like, I didn't plan that, but what I was trying, well,
Yeah.
what I was,
Thanks a lot, Brian.
what I was trying to point out
Brian.
is
Brian
when
Pieri, P-I-E-R.
when that happens, we get 2 BCF a day thrust into the U.S. market, or roughly 2% of the U.S. market now becomes oversupplied. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that moves price significantly. That can move the price 30%.
Let's stick there for a second, because you're using terms like BCF, things
Right.
like
Yes.
that. So if I'm listening to this and I'm not in tune with that,
Okay.
let's talk about the fluctuation of the markets, right? Because we're seeing this. We're even seeing globally right now with Iran, all the different things that
Right.
are taking place. Anytime this stuff starts to move, how do we as consumers, people here in the U.S., people in this region, how are we impacted by all these things? Like you just described, you said this BCF moves. Well, if I'm just Joe Blow driving down the road, right, and I've got to pay for gas, I got to pay for electricity in my house,
Yep.
I got to pay for everything that's going to drive that stuff. Natural gas has an impact on that. Can you help people kind of understand that flow through of how these things, how does one thing impact the other and then cause those trickle-down effects?
So that's a great question, and one thing that I did,
And do it in under,
what's that?
and we have to do it in under 5 minutes.
In under 5 minutes. Okay.
No, I'm kidding, because you really could make that.
Yeah, I was going
work.
to
Yes.
say. Yeah, I was going to say that was a career.
Yeah,
question.
exactly.
You can do that for
Yeah,
a career.
right.
So you're impacted in terms of gasoline, in terms of electricity prices, and natural gas prices. So if you use natural gas in your home, if you use electricity, chances are in Houston you use electricity, and
Right.
and a lot. That's part of the reason summertime prices are a little bit higher. I live in Colorado, so it's actually inverse. I'm originally from Houston, but it impacts utility prices, and the energy complex is an integral part of the underlying part of the economy. Everything you're wearing right now, these microphones, they have plastics, they have things that are manufactured from petroleum. And the one of the biggest challenges that oil and gas and renewables has is they've entered into a very politically charged stalemate, which is one or the other. And being energy analysts, we're like, y'all stop bickering. We actually need both, because the fact of the matter is that if we increase Teslas in Houston right now by 10%, we will have brownouts and blackouts. That is just a pure fact.
Wow.
If we start, so the thing is that many policymakers aren't connecting the dots on how integrated it is, because that power does not. It needs to be upgraded by probably $4 trillion.
Right.
The entire power
And it
grid
can't happen overnight.
No.
No.
Right.
And that's why it's
you
not.
don't want one of those oops on that either.
Yeah.
So it's an
True story.
it's or said a different way, oil if we reduced our supply globally by 15%, we're actually going to have food shortages globally.
Right.
So it's interconnected
Wow.
into every fabric of economics, and this is why it's important to understand. It may be hard to understand from a consumption side, but it does impact you.
Well, the reality is, in my business, we say when I'm working with clients and we're in the the money game, and we say you don't want to let the tax tail wag the dog, right? Meaning people will make short-sighted decisions because they're trying to save a tax dollar, not really looking at the cumulative picture. And I think it's the same way when you look at this energy transition. You can't let the sexiness and the buzzwords wag the tail, wag the dog. You have to look at the cumulative picture of how does everything flow through to one another, and then how do you do it in a way that's sustainable, that we can actually, because you just mentioned these $1 billion oops, right? Well, when when a company or an oil company makes $1 billion oops, and it's just cost them a ton of money, and it doesn't flow through to me as a consumer, I'm a little less frustrated. But when you do make that oops, and you go ahead and you push this agenda, or you drive this thing home, and you make that big, $1 trillion, $1 billion oops, and I'm without power for a week.
Right.
Yes.
Now I'm a little frustrated.
Yes,
now there's
exactly.
something going on, and so we have to be very mindful.
I mean,
of that
in
approach.
2021, that was a big issue with Uri coming through.
Right.
So I know, because my mom, we had to get her set up in a hotel that had power because she needed heat.
Yep.
And that's a fact of the matter. We just did a presentation to the Oklahoma legislators because they needed to be educated on the oil and gas economics, because a lot of their tax base comes from oil and gas taxation. And we had to inform them, unfortunately, well, your tax base is about to take a big drop. And they're like, wait, what?
Wait, what? Yeah.
And so the only way that they can make up the tax base is increase taxation on consumers and taxpayers rather than oil and gas revenues, because they had a third of their revenue source which was suspect to oil and gas declines, which they didn't really understand. So it is an integral part of the taxation base, both from a state perspective. Texas is very mineral rich, so is Oklahoma.
Right.
So they get to benefit from a lower tax base, but rest assured, if there's lower oil and gas production, the consumers will be paying more in tax, and it's an ever-escalating train.
Yeah, it goes back to the if you remember when we had the shutdowns, everybody, it's fun for a while, and everybody's like, oh, great, I got to stay home and work from the house.
Yeah, camping in your living room. Yeah.
And then next year when my trash bill went up and everything went up by God 30-40%, and you know what's interesting is as inflation's come down, it hasn't gone down.
No.
Right? They're never going to take it back down.
No.
Because of the billions of dollars that was lost in taxable revenue from just being unopened. Right. So it's the same concept.
We had the same issue in Oklahoma, and when they finally got it down, we would be paying for the repairs and everything for that week for 25 years.
Wow.
On our bills.
Right. I mean, so I think the moral of the story is that it's not. You have to use data, right?
Yes.
To make educated decisions, and then people have to get past. It's not. This is the right way. There's a number of right ways, and you have to work in concert together. So that's the secret sauce, right?
Typically, what we try to do is we start with data, but then we take data and turn it into information.
Okay, great.
And then we take information and turn it into strategy, and then take that strategy to be able to drive action.
Or said a different way, we have utilities on our system,
okay,
that manage costs for their base, like municipals. These are impacting people's utilities bills,
right? And
they're trying to stay educated so that they can manage that tax base. Then we have producers that are trying to manage the fluctuating price and their revenues, because, like you said with the trash example, it in our society, in a capitalist society, people have to manage their revenues and costs.
Right.
And so when the shutdown happened, a lot of revenues dropped and costs were still there. So there has to be a recoup period. And as Bill was talking about, the Uri event that happened in Texas in 2021, that impacted power everywhere from Dallas all the way down to Waco, and even impacted Houston and whatnot. Prices went from $2. Your utility bill went up by 100%.
Oh, yeah.
For 1 month.
Yeah, I know a lot of energy traders that retired and bought yachts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
That
many
wasn't us, by the way.
But yeah.
and many that are unemployed.
Yeah, exactly.
That are on the other side
the
of
other
that.
side of that,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, hey guys, before we run out of time, you mentioned something. You said you were working with Oklahoma, or with the municipality of Oklahoma, I suppose, or who?
The legislators.
The legislators.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm assuming you said you gave them a presentation. So along with your data, meaning you guys are data aggregators with your software, and you produce that. Are you guys then also consultants? Meaning people can bring you in for education on what does all this data mean to my business?
Yes, and ultimately we have two different pricing tiers. We have $89 a month and $179.
Okay.
And for the $179, we do a consultation with you every month.
Okay.
So independent for your business, and that's part of the reason that we have the price tier. It's like it shouldn't be cost prohibitive.
Understood.
And then if there's really a larger requirement beyond that, then it needs to be catered, and we just cater to that. It's not a core part of our business, but we do it.
Okay.
And oftentimes, if it's a continual customer, we'll just do it for you.
Right.
It's not a transaction as much as, listen, if we have our community, and that's part of the reason that our $179 tier, we opened up a community, because what happened is it's an explosion of information, because we found people connecting other people. We had a producer that found an operating team and a finance backing in our community.
Okay.
And so they all connected together, and they're like, this is fantastic. I can create a company from nothing just because I had access to this community. So we're really trying to build a community, because your angle into the energy industry is different from somebody else's, from this person, and that's part of the reason that we opened this up, and we've had a global impact so far.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the important piece, is that, you keep using the word community, but that's really what this is about. I mean, when you think about energy, it is a community. It's a community that stretches from here all the way across the globe.
Right.
And the secret is everybody's got to come together and understand that you got to use data. You got to dig into the data, and then you got to take that data and then it can't just support what you what you want to see have happen. It has to support what you want to have happen, what somebody else wants to have happen, and then you got to meet somewhere in the middle. Because it impacts everybody.
Right, exactly, it does.
You can make a decision and say, well, I want that because that's the best for my state, but then, well, what about the other 49 states, or what about the rest of the globe? And so there's this kind of constant push-pull, and it's one of the things that I'm most proud of about our region, really, here in Houston, Texas, and really this coast in and of itself, is I think more and more stuff keeps coming and pushed into this area, this region, because Texas is doing what they can to support the energy industry. And also, people don't realize all these, I'm looking around at all these energy companies, these giant, big names around here, but guess what? There's some of the biggest dollars being spent, some of the most energy being spent right now on energy transition, making the world a cleaner place, doing the right things to make things more sustainable, is happening from the oil guys.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the misnomers is that oil and gas doesn't want renewables. It's like, actually, some of the largest solar and wind is utilized by oil and gas in remote areas to generate power, rather than running power lines everywhere and being inefficient. So a lot of energy companies, I say energy companies, it's really oil and gas companies that are looking at the cost-benefit analysis of, well, wait a second, how can we do this? Because I'll be clear, is there an environmental impact on oil and gas? Absolutely. Is there an environmental impact on building renewables? Absolutely. They both have benefits and detriments, and they both have impact. And so it's about the utility of understanding that energy base and what it's going to do for us, because when you look at it, if 20% of the global supply of crude oil drops, we have food shortages globally. I mean, that's That's how interconnected the entire industry. I mean, I'm not talking about clothes or toys or iPhones. I'm talking about the fact that some people would starve because we have so much reliance on energy. And if we can move it to a less of an environmental impact, everybody should.
Well, and then we'll wrap up after this. But what I would say is, if anything's taught us since 2020, is that if one thing triggers one event, and it can have a monstrous effect. On the globe.
And one thing we say about the data is, it's never one thing.
Right.
No.
It's always a multiple things that happen in a sequence that causes one thing.
And so let's use that as a way to transition out of the show, because I think you just hit it. It's the data and the sequence, and that's what you guys are in the business of doing, right? I think in our industry, across most industries, when you're going to make an educated decision and you're trying to do it, you have to be able to extrapolate the data. You have to understand the data, and then you have to be able to go out and use it and know how to apply the data. And it sounds a lot like that's what you guys are in the business of doing.
That's exactly what we do.
So, so for our audience, if people want to get plugged into you guys, what's the easiest way to stay connected to Energy Rogue, and then in the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'd love for you to come subscribe. You don't have to, but if you go to energyrogue.com, it's not Rouge, it's Rogue, and it's energyrogue.com. And just click on the register button. That'll take you to a page that'll give you the $89 option, the $179. Just click one of those. It's a credit card processing application, and it is a month-to-month commitment. There is no long-term commitment. And if you sign up and you email me within the first week and say, listen, this is not for me, I'll just refund your money, it's not a thing. The main thing is that to get there, it's energyrogue.com. Click on the register button. We are also on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and we are active on those platforms. You can reach out to Bill Shanahan or Brian Pieri on any of those platforms.
Fantastic.
You guys need to come go rogue with us.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. I'm still going to wait for your book to come out. I think, what'd you say? I forgot what you said.
BS by BS.
Oil.
Oh, no.
BS by BS.
From the rig floor to the boardroom.
Rig floor to the boardroom, man. That's a killer book title. Or another podcast. So hey, as we wrap up, we got a few sponsors that we have to thank for particularly this booth today and the ability for OGGN to be able to do what they do. And so TGS, with decades of experience, TGS aims to provide deep insights and understanding to support society's evolving energy needs across the energy spectrum through innovation and data-driven solutions. They utilize diverse data sources, including their own, to create actionable insights that enable you to make the right decisions. So check them out. The link is in the show notes, and it's tgs.com. And then again, we got to thank OGGN. Mark LaCour and his team, man, they really are the brand. They are the brand when it comes to the really podcasting and getting the word out, and really inspiring others to understand more and more about energy. And so Mark has a passion for it.
Mark LaCour, the smartest podcaster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are the world's largest and most listened to oil and gas podcast network in the world. Learn more at OGGN.com. And then the Nape today, where we're at, North American Prospect Expo, where deals are done. Check them out at napeexpo.com. And then again, USI. Prizes, they were donated to us by them. They're USI Insurance Services, so visit them at usi.com. And then, as always, thank you for tuning in and staying close to the Economic Alliance. You can stay connected to us at HoustonPortRegion.com and subscribe to all of our channels and stay up to speed on these kind of great episodes that we bring. So thanks a lot, guys.
We appreciate it.
We'll see you guys out there. Thanks a lot. Bye. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to go to the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region website and subscribe to our channels. And let's pay it forward by sharing the good news of what's happening in our region by passing this episode to somebody you know.